Public relations is an ever-changing, growing, and impactful industry. The practice of public relations has the power to change the future for organizations, businesses, and individuals alike. Practitioners and professionals make positive change for clients through communication services, crisis management, campaigns, and more. However, the field is simultaneously notorious for its bad reputation. This is largely due to the origins of public relations, starting with a propaganda approach, providing a knowingly biased narrative to influence public opinion. This approach was developed by Edward Bernays, also known as the father of public relations. If you're already in the public relations industry, you've likely heard the term spin used to describe public relations. This is primarily due to Bernays' propaganda approach. Practitioners known for deceptive or unethical practice were often referred to as spin doctors. In the 1900s, the industry operated more closely to this propaganda approach than public relations as we know it today. A prime example of this can be seen in the 1920s with Bernays himself. He created a campaign for the American Tobacco Company encouraging women to smoke despite the stigma that it held at the time. However, in order to do this, Bernays claimed that smoking was a suitable alternative for desserts and helped weight loss endeavors. Later on, he positioned cigarettes as a means of freedom. Today, it would be hard to find a PR professional that would share such deceptive and false messages. This history and stereotype of public relations brought a need for change and accountability to the forefront of the public relations industry. It was crucial to the preservation of the profession that a code of conduct is strictly upheld in order to protect its integrity and do the best work possible for clients. In 1950, the Public Relations Society of America, PRSA, develops the Code of Ethics. The code provides guidelines to PR professionals to inspire ethical practice and lays out the core values of PRSA. These values include advocacy, honesty, expertise, independence, loyalty, and fairness. Each of these are explained by the organization as the following. Advocacy. We serve the public interest by acting as responsible advocates for those we represent. We provide a voice in the marketplace of ideas, facts, and viewpoints to aid informed public debate. Honesty. We adhere to the highest standards of accuracy and truth in advancing the interest of those we represent and in communicating with the public. Expertise. We acquire and responsibly use specialized knowledge and experience. We advance the profession through continued professional development, research, and education. We build mutual understanding, credibility, and relationships among a wide array of institutions and audiences. Independence. We provide objective counsel to those we represent. We are accountable for our actions. Loyalty. We are faithful to those we represent while honoring our obligation to serve the public interest. Fairness. We deal fairly with clients, employers, competitors, peers, vendors, the media, and the general public. We respect all opinions and support the right of free expression. In order to truly bring these values to life and provide clear expectations for PR professionals, PRSA offers more specific guidelines in the next portion of the Code of Ethics called the PRSA Code of Provisions. This section gives concrete examples of ethical and unethical practice while outlining key focuses in any public relations activities. The first provision is free flow of information. The Code of Ethics describes this provision as a core principle protecting and advancing the free flow of accurate and truthful information. It is essential to serving the public interest and contributing to informed decision-making in a democratic society. The intent governing this specific provision is to maintain the integrity of relationships with media, government officials, and the public. Aiding informed decision-making is another key intent aligned with this provision. The guidelines provided for professionals in achieving this provision include preserving the integrity of the process of communication, being honest and accurate in all communications, acting promptly to correct inaccurate communication for which the practitioner is responsible, and lastly, preserve the free flow of unprejudiced information when giving or receiving gifts by ensuring that all gifts are nominal, legal, and infrequent. Influencers and columnists are great examples of where free flow of information may get tricky. For example, a representative of a skincare company gifts expensive products to a beauty columnist in hopes of a favorable review of the product. This would be an example of a violation of the provision of free flow of information. PRSA's next provision is competition. Competition in the Code of Ethics can be explained as the core principle of promoting healthy and fair competition among professionals to preserve an ethical climate while fostering a robust business environment. The intentions behind this provision are defined as promoting respect and fair competition among public relations professionals and serving the public interest by providing the widest choice of practitioner options possible. The guidelines provided include following ethical hiring practices designed to respect free and open competition without deliberately undermining a competitor, and preserving intellectual property rights in the marketplace. Violating the conduct of the competition provision might look like a PR practitioner at firm X spreading harmful rumors about firm Y in an attempt to eliminate competition and recruit people and business in an unfair approach. Disclosure of information. This core principle of open communication fosters informed decision-making in a democratic society. The intent driving this provision is to build trust with the public by revealing all information needed for responsible decision-making. PRSA's guidelines advise to be honest and accurate in all communications, act promptly to correct inaccurate communication for which the member is responsible, investigate the truthfulness and accuracy of information released on behalf of those represented, reveal sponsors for causes and interests, disclose financial interests such as stock ownership in a client's organization, and avoid deceptive practices. Looking at misconduct under this provision may include situations that do not appear as obvious as others. For example, lying by omission would be a violation of this provision. An example could be a PR practitioner for a corporation knowingly failing to release financial information, giving a misleading impression of its performance. Safeguarding confidences. Client trust requires appropriate protection of confidential and private information. The intent driving this provision is to protect the privacy rights of clients, organizations, and individuals by safeguarding confidential information. Guidelines explain that a member should safeguard the confidences and privacy rights of present, former, and prospective clients and employees, protect privileged, confidential, or insider information gained from a client or organization, and immediately advise an appropriate authority if a member discovers that confidential information is being divulged by an employee of the client's company or organization. Misconduct regarding safeguarding confidences might look like a PR practitioner transitioning into a new job. They use the confidential information from their previous job to the detriment of the former employer and the benefit of their current employer. Using that confidential information violates the privacy rights of their previous employer. Conflicts of interest is the next PRSA provision provided. This core principle avoids real, potential, or perceived conflicts of interest in order to build the trust of clients, employers, and publics. The key intents driving this provision include earning trust and mutual respect with clients and employers, and building trust with the public by avoiding or ending all situations that put one's personal or professional interests in conflict with society's interests. Guidelines state that practitioners should act in the best interests of the client or employer, even subordinating the member's personal interests. Avoid actions and circumstances that may appear to compromise good business judgment or create a conflict between personal and professional interests. Disclose promptly any existing or potential conflict of interest to affected clients or organizations, and encourage clients and customers to determine if a conflict exists after notifying all affected parties. An example of misconduct with this provision might look like a PR practitioner failing to disclose a strong financial interest in a client's primary competitor. The next provision of enhancing the profession ties closely with the history of deception and unethical practice discussed at the beginning of this video. This provision requires that public relations professionals work constantly to strengthen the public's trust in the profession. The primary intents driving this provision are to build respect and credibility with the public for the profession of public relations and to improve, adapt, and expand professional practices. In order to adhere to this provision, a member must acknowledge that there is an obligation to protect and enhance the profession, keep informed and educated about practices in the profession to ensure ethical conduct, actively pursue professional development, decline representation of clients or organizations that urge or require actions contrary to the Code of Ethics, accurately define what public relations activities can accomplish, counsel subordinates in proper ethical decision-making, require that subordinates adhere to the ethical requirements of the PRSA Code of Ethics, report practices that fail to comply with the code, whether committed by PRSA members or not, to the appropriate authority. Misconduct in enhancing the profession might look like a PRSA member publicly claiming that a product of a client is safe without disclosing existing evidence to the contrary. Now, in order to understand the importance of the Public Relations Code of Ethics, we must first recognize the power we hold as public relations practitioners. Bill Gates, co-founder of the Microsoft Corporation, was once quoted saying, "If I was down to my last dollar, I would spend it on public relations." With public relations aiming to inform and shape public opinion on behalf of clients, it is absolutely crucial that its ethicality never comes into question. This industry is incredibly influential to human behavior and society as a whole. The impact of public relations can be seen in passing legislation, gaining the public's attention for important social issues, aiding informed voting during presidential elections, and managing corporate crises alike. Without public relations, none of the aforementioned scenarios could be wholly handled with a successful outcome. Ethics in public relations are vital in retaining this monumental impact on society. We must never take lightly the impact we have on the world as practitioners of public relations. Now, let's have a quick review of the key takeaways from this video. The following tips will help you to meet your obligation to ethical public relations practice. Know the PRSA Code of Ethics. As the standard code used by PR practitioners, it will serve you well to be well-versed in its content. Start your career with ethical practice in mind. By adhering to the PRSA Code of Ethics from the beginning, you'll be less likely to run into trouble later on. Lead by example. By showing others your commitment to public relations ethics in your actions, you are demonstrating great leadership and helping to defeat this outdated stereotype of PR as a deceptive and untrustworthy industry. Lastly, public relations is a superpower. Never forget the power you hold as a PR practitioner. We must use our influence for good and always practical, ethical PR with the utmost integrity and a fierce commitment to doing what's right. Thanks for watching. Finally, I'd like to provide you with some resources to learn more about public relations ethics and why they're so important. The PRSA Code of Ethics, of course, will be your most helpful resource. PRSA also provides a number of resources to public relations professionals on ethical practice, including an annual conference, educational opportunities, and case studies. Other organizations that provide great insight into the role of public relations ethics include the Institute for Public Relations, PR Week, the Global Code of Ethics, PR Council, and PR Daily. This brings us to the end of the video. I hope you've developed a greater understanding of ethics in public relations and will use this knowledge in your public relations practice.